Good afternoon. This is an analysis of the third grade math pre and post assessment data. And today we are moving beyond the averages to identify targeted instructional actions that would drive student mastery. So, what you see here is a high level overview. To set the stage, we are looking at 80 students across three homeroom classes. While we saw a modest overall growth of 6.5%, the new data reveals a critical concern that 36 students are stagnant learners with zero pre to post movement. So, the immediate action required is to reteach the standards for questions 4 and 5 and align tier one instruction. In this instructional analytics hub, you see moving from a pre-test average of 46.75% to a post-test average of 53.25%. And although this is measurable improvement, that 53.25% average clearly indicates that the majority of the students have not yet reached concept mastery. So on to the student movement analysis. Analyzing those student movement is critical because as Bernhardt 2025 notes, averages alone can mask stagnant learning. So in this particular presentation, we see three distinct paths. We see 27 students improve, but the largest cohort consists of 36 students with no change, and 17 students actually decline. This indicates that there's a misunderstanding of concepts or a lack of retention. So, continuing in this instructional analytics hub, this is a classroom variation. We see a stark variation in instructional impact across the classrooms. Here in classroom A, they showed strong improvement, while classroom B had minimum growth. Classroom C experienced a slight decline. And per FIS 2023, effective school improvement requires teacher teams to collaboratively examine the differences to identify the practices driving the stronger outcomes in classroom A. So, moving to the subgroup performances, we see that the subgroups provided a bright spot, with the English learners achieving a 13.33% growth and special education students seeing 14% growth. These gains significantly exceeded the grade level average. Therefore, the targeted supports provided to these students should be studied to strengthen that tier one instruction for all of the learners. So going back to that instructional analytics hub, this is an item level table. This item level analysis reveals where they succeeded and where they struggled. So they achieved mastery on question one with over 26% growth, but question five saw an active decline of 2.5%. So this signaled that a deep misconception that was not corrected by the initial instruction. Continuing on with the instructional analytics hub, this focused on the highest needed area, which was question four, remains chronically low at 23.75% accuracy. And even more concerning was question five, where accuracy decreased after instruction. So Bernhardt 2025 highlights that this type of item analysis is essential to identify exactly which standards require immediate reteaching. So the averages illusion. So you have to avoid the averages illusion. So while the 6.5% overall growth looks like progress, it provides a false sense of instructional completion. The underlying data, specifically the 53 students who either stagnated or declined, they mandate an immediate targeted intervention rather than advancing to the next unit. So here are some recommended next steps. These next steps, they follow the FIX 2023 and Bernhardt 2025 framework for continuous improvement. They take a three-tiered approach, which is a systemic collaboration through data teams, targeted small group reteaching for questions 4 and 5, and ongoing rapid formative cycles to prevent future stagnation. So, the data informed improvement, this collaborative process will start by bringing evidence such as student work samples, incorrect responses to the meetings. Then they would need to identify patterns to determine root causes of misunderstandings and compare approaches to scale the effective tier 1 practices used in the strong growth classroom. So right here, you see the targeted reteaching protocol, and the focus is on questions 4 and question 5. So for the reteaching of questions 4 and 5, they would need to follow up a specific protocol. First, maybe regroup the students based on those misconceptions. Second, remodel the concept using the explicit modeling and new visual representations. And thirdly, allow students to articulate their thinking to expose and correct those underlying confusions. So this instructional unit assessment timeline. So moving forward, adjustments needed to be made to the assessment timeline. They will need to implement quick checks and exit tickets to identify those misconceptions early. They may need to even follow it up by short cycle follow up assessments that can be administered immediately after reteaching, just to verify that the instructional adjustments were successful before they do the final summative mastery check. And lastly, in this instructional alignment, this is an instructional alignment dashboard. So this dashboard aligns to the diagnosed gaps with those targeted actions that they would need to address those inconsistent growth through those collaborative teams. They need to tackle specific misconceptions through small group reteaching and move the stagnant learners through the rapid formative cycles. And so we know as leaders and educators, we must use this data not just to evaluate the outcomes, but to drive continuous collaborative improvement. Thank you.